This is a recording of a recent webinar that I gave about how to coach hurdlers throughout the season for success. I put chapters in place in case you want to skip around. The first part talks about my background and how ACE method coaching got started. If you're not interested in that, skip forward where I get into the meat of the coaching. Stick around to the end because I give a coupon to get something free in my store. I hope you get something out of this. Okay. I want to first just start off by telling you who I am, because a lot of you I don't know. And if you just pick this up from a recent posting that I put out there, you might not know anything about me. But even if you've been watching some of my videos for a time, I don't ever really talk about myself. So just as a brief thing here, I have been a coach for many years. I don't even know how exactly many years. I'm thinking it around 1999 is when I started hurdle coaching. I started off at a middle school, did that 1 year there, then ended up starting a summer track team in USATF. This is all in Colorado. And then from there, I went to a high school program, and I took over as the head coach, and I was there for about 15 years. And I was the head coach and the hurdle coach. And during that time, as the years went on, progressively more and more success with my hurdlers, to the point where it was noticeable. Other coaches were asking me to help their kids. And in my summer program, kids from other schools were specifically coming to that so they can work with me. So that led into that. I ended up going to a larger school to coach hurdles there, and then also at the Division II school in Colorado Springs, University of Colorado, Colorado Springs. I helped out a couple of seasons with their hurdlers there, and that went fantastic. And then at around the time that COVID happened, that shut down the summer season. And so I just started doing private coaching because kids still wanted it. So I was seeing kids from around the city, but also other cities, within about a hour drive to come and work with me. And just throughout this whole process, throughout that process, I just realized how much there is a need to help other coaches, because it was strangely, my success was strangely repeatable, whatever I was doing. And I feel like I was even taking kids who honestly I didn't think were very talented, and then moving them up to qualify for state. And it just seemed kind of surprising. And it seems really obvious when you can see a school who has not just mine, but other, you can always tell what schools have good hurdle coaches, because they've always got hurdlers at the state meet. It's always a lot of the same ones over time. And so I just thought, there's just a need for this. And so I started putting some videos on YouTube, and then started acemethodcoaching.com. And the feedback that I've gotten over the last couple of years has just really affirmed that this is a good idea, that people really need it. Because you've got athletes who want to hurdle, but they're in areas and schools that don't have qualified coaches to help them, and they reach out to me. And I've got some really good coaches who have great experience in track and field, but they just don't know hurdles very well, and they need help for their hurdlers. So that's what this is all about. Just in case you don't know, I've got a series of videos on YouTube that are specifically for coaches. And what I'm going to cover today kind of touches on several of them, plus some other things I'm going to show you. One is how to identify your hurdlers, how to coach hurdles to beginners, how to coach hurdling drills, how to organize your practices, how to make hurdlers faster. And then also I've got some products that I sell quite a few of. One of them is called Hurdling 101. And this is a step-by-step plan for taking somebody who's never hurdled and then teach them to be proficient and get through a race. And then I have another one called Hurdling 201, and that kind of picks it up from there. This is for the athlete that can get through a race. Maybe they can't three-step them all the way, and maybe they jump a lot and they struggle through it. But this would take them from that point and how do they get better? How do they get to the point where hopefully they're racing in the fast heats at an invitational? And then hurdling 301 is just the stuff that the majority of high school hurdlers will never get to, but the ones that can, the ones who reaching the 3 steps is no longer a problem, and they just want to get faster and faster. Maybe they want to go to college, or they just want to be really good. This would be where um, we pick this up. So anyway, the material I'm going to cover is going to just kind of glean stuff from the 101 and 201, but also those videos that I put on there. And just know that at the end of this, I'm going to give you a coupon code for $29 that you can apply to either one of these. Because just so you know, if you were to buy one of these individually, they're each $29, or have a bundle for $69. And I'll tell you more about it at the end. But just know that as you're listening to me, if you just want to just use that coupon all by itself, you might figure out over time which one you want to get, the 101 or the 201, okay? So moving on. Now, when it comes to identifying your hurdlers, here's some things that you want to look for. Well, a couple things. One is you do need athletes who have some speed. Okay, there is a misconception that your fastest runners, you're going to make them your sprinters, and some kids who aren't so fast, but maybe you can make them a hurdler because they could be maybe good at that, okay? And while there is some truth to that, they're never going to be a great hurdler unless they're fast. And they're probably going to have a hard time three-stepping unless they've got pretty good speed or long legs. Something to keep in mind. The other thing they need is athleticism because of the speed and the movement involved. They need to have confidence. And then a new thing that I just added this today from my new friend, Abby Lewis, is they need to be okay with falling because they're going to fall at some point. I mean, it's possible to not fall, but it's also possible that you are going to fall, and they just need to be comfortable with that and know that once that happens, to get back up and try it again and not just give up, okay? So things to look for. Now, I talk about this in one of my videos, and it's explained a lot in my hurdling this is explained a lot in my hurdle training plan, which I haven't covered yet. But I recommend at somewhere in your first week of practice to have what I call the hurdle introduction day, okay? There's 2 goals for that. One is for you to identify kids who might be hurdlers. Maybe they never thought about it, but you could find some people who lean in this direction. But also is to from day one teach them how to run over hurdles versus what most kids do, which is run up to a hurdle, slow down, jump over, land, accelerate, slow down, jump over and land, and just keep repeating that for 10 hurdles or 8 hurdles, depending on what your race is. So this hopefully stops that and just teaches them how to do it properly from the beginning. So it teaches them how to maintain a low curve going over the hurdle. It's going to solve most of the errors that you see in hurdling that I've already described, because I don't know if you know this, but part of my specialty is analyzing technique. And I do a lot of sessions where people send me their technique and I'll go over it and I'll give them feedback and show them how to improve. I also get a lot of free requests, and I do those once a week. I put them on a live stream. But I see a whole lot of the same things over and over, and they're all the same things: slowing down, jumping up, landing, and then repeating this over and over. And they could almost all be solved if they just ran fast over that hurdle. It's amazing. And then also just know that because most high school hurdlers, certainly the younger ones, are not good at all, just by having your kids get through this, they're already going to be better than most of their competition. Okay. Now here's the strategy that I'm going to suggest that you do on your hurdle introduction day. But before I go over the details, let me just say that this is a best case scenario because it's going to ask you to have 4 dedicated lanes on a track, 16 hurdles. And I know that a lot of hurdlers and a lot of programs don't have all this. You might only have 1 or 2 lanes that you can use. You might only have a total of 8 hurdles. You might not even have any real hurdles. You might not even have a track. So, I get that. So I can't possibly give the details for every scenario. So what I'm going to do is just give you the best case scenario, and then you figure out a way how to take this concept and modify it for whatever your situation is. Okay, hope that makes sense. So ideally, you've got 4 lanes at least, and then you are going to have 4 lanes in each, 4 hurdles in each lane, so 16 hurdles. You're going to start with some small hurdles, and I've got, I just put a picture up here. It could be these, it could be anything you want to, it could be a piece of bamboo stick on top of cones. I don't care, just something where you can go from lower to medium to higher. And this is kind of what the layout is going to look like. Okay, you're going to have your hurdles out there. You're going to have 4 lanes. And in the first lane, now keep in mind this first phase, they're really low, right? Short hurdles. The first lane, you're going to have them about 7 meters apart. Okay. And then the second lane, they're going to be 7.5 meters apart, then 8 meters apart, then 8.5 meters apart. Now, 8.5 is what girls race at. So it might be, just keep in mind that, well, I'll get to that in a second, but just know that they're really close at the beginning. And you're going to put all of your kids in that first lane, the one that in my picture says lane 5. And you're going to have them just run over this and tell them the goal is to stay fast, stay low, and 3-step between each hurdle. Some of them are going to do it in 2 steps. Some big, tall kids might even do it in 1 step. I don't know. But just tell them the goal is to do it in 3 steps. And then once they can do that, then they move over to the next lane. And they do that until they can get it. Then they move to the next lane. They keep repeating that. Now, you might have a kid, a tall, fast, athletic kid who can just get right through every one of them, 4 repetitions, and they'll be done through this whole thing. You might have a kid who might have to do 10 times in the first lane and still not get it, and everything in between. And you might have some that, maybe the first 2 lanes are just too close for them and it's too uncomfortable. And you just use your judgment as a coach and you might immediately put them into the 3rd lane. So just understand the concept is to just get them to understand it's about running over hurdles, not jumping over hurdles. And then you progress them as you can. And as I said here, you run them through lane 1, you go to the next one, and then you repeat this for all the lanes. And then once you're done with this, this is what I'm calling phase 1. This is where you assess and eliminate. So you look at all the kids that you ran through here, and the ones that are liking it and doing great and want to do more, you tell them to stick around. The kids that are hating it or not looking good at this and you don't think there's a chance, then they can move on. They can go try jumping or pole vaulting or who knows what else, but they're just not going to be a hurdler, okay? So you take the ones you have left over and you go on to phase 2 and then phase 3. Now it's the same thing, but now each time you're working with taller hurdles, okay? So in phase 2, you do the same thing again with the lane, same spacing, this time little taller hurdles, and you pull all the kids through. Now, one caveat though. Your girls might not be able to make it through the 4th lane, and that's okay. And I'll get into that later, but the boys should definitely be able to make it through all 4 lanes. The girls might only make it through lane 3 and struggle in lane 4, and that's okay. So just keep that in mind. And then phase 3, so basically at the end of the 2nd round, what we'll call phase 2, again, you might eliminate a few more kids, and then you'll do it again for phase 3, this time with 30-inch hurdles. And again, at the end, you're going to eliminate a whole bunch of kids, but you're going to end up with a situation where you're going to have 3 groups. Group 1 are all the kids that you've eliminated. They're either not interested or they're not capable. You're also going to have a group of kids who are interested, but they're just not capable or you don't think they're ready. Those you're going to consider your hurdle development group. Group 3, those are the ones that are capable and interested, and that's going to be your hurdle squad, okay? And so I'm going to show you how to handle both of those. So for your developmental group, moving forward with the hurdles is very much like the hurdle introduction day, okay? Excuse me, we're going to have some lanes out. They might only get 1 lane or 2 lanes, depending on what you got, or maybe they're doing it in the grass or in the field or something, but it's just them learning how to do what you were doing on the introduction day, or and just have them learn how to do it and gradually spreading out their hurdles until they can do it. But that's it. And then there's how do you teach them technique? But this teaching technique doesn't only apply to the kids in the hurdle development group. It also is going to apply to every hurdler you have, because some of them, I guess in here, I never thought about this way, but you can also have 3 categories of kids here. You got the kids who are in hurdle development group, and they can't even get over hurdles at all or run between them the way you were doing. And you're teaching them to get better. And then you've got kids who are in your hurdle squad because they did a great job on the hurdle introduction day, but they're still not good at hurdling. You still need to teach them how to hurdle. And then you got your kids who are the veterans who can hurdle, and maybe they're even pretty good, but there's almost no kid out there, even the great ones, who couldn't improve their technique. So this applies to everyone, what I'm going to show you here. So when you teach technique, I like to have progressive complexity and also progressive speed and distance, okay? Progressive complexity means that for every movement of the technique that you're trying to teach, whether it's your arms or a lead leg or a trail leg, or how to approach the hurdle, how to clear the hurdle, how to pull your trail arm through, whatever you're working on at the moment, it's best to isolate that limb. So let's say, for example, they're working on their lead arm. You want to have them standing in place so they don't have to use their legs. Let's say they lead with their left arm. You want to put their right arm at their hip and they only move that left arm. Slowly till they get it right, then you gradually get faster and faster. And as that becomes easy, then you can say, okay, now let's add the other arm. And so you have both arms swinging, one doing a lead, one doing a trail. So you've made it progressively more complex. As humans, we learn better that way. When you throw too many things in at one time, it becomes complicated. So that's why you want to isolate it and then start adding more limbs. And you could add the legs into it by saying, okay, now we're going to do it walking. Or now we're going to do it over hurdles. We're going to do it 1-stepping, then 3-stepping. So hopefully you kind of see the progression of how you start very simple and make it more complex. And then you also want to get progressive with the speed and the distance. Here's what I mean by that. Maybe an athlete, okay, let's say you have a hurdler and you put them over the hurdles and they look okay, but their arms are wild, right? Just all over the place. And then you take them through and you show them how to move their arms right. And you do what I just showed you on the left-hand column here, and they're doing great. And then you can do it if they're jogging over hurdles, but then you go to try to race and they back to square one, they look horrible again. Well, that's because that's the way it works, is you can't just do it slow and expect it to work at full speed. So you also need to gradually increase the speed, which also means you're increasing the spacing of the hurdles. So as you're teaching them, you're going to want to go with very reduced spacing at slower speeds. And as they get better, you gradually space them out, okay, as they are ready. Okay, so start slow and add speed as the athlete becomes proficient. My speed progression is you do it standing first, like up against a wall or standing in place. Then you do it walking. Then you do it skipping drills, where the hurdles are spaced out, maybe like 6 feet. And then you do jogging drills where they're spaced out farther. And then you go running. You might be running at 80% and then to 90%, and then eventually to 100%. So you basically build a lot of little bridges to get them from the drill to full speed. And that works really well when you're trying to improve technique. Okay. All right. So now you still have to deal with all your kids on I take that back. Now we're done with the kids in the developmental team. Now we're talking about your actual hurdle squad and what does a practice look like, okay? So I'm gonna just get this out of the way, even though I mentioned it in another slide, because I don't want it sticking in your head is how often do you do this? I don't have my hurdlers do this more than 3 days a week. So let's say it's a non-meet week, like the first or second week of the season, 3 days a week only. And if we have a meet during the week, that racing day counts as a hurdling day. So the most they would ever do is a total of 3 days over the hurdles, mostly because it's just so tough on the body. And you just want to minimize that kind of stuff, okay? And just know that in general, for all of my sprinters and hurdlers, we only were on the track sprinting 3 days a week, even if it was a racing day. So 2 practices and then a race. The other days we were in the weight room on the other days. It's just something I learned over the years that amazingly decreased the amount of injuries that we had, certainly in the lower legs. It was huge when we did this. I could work them out really hard on Monday, and then there's no pounding on Tuesday, and I can just crush them again on Wednesday, and you repeat that. And it was so much better than when we were running every day. Just something that I've tried, and I think it works well. Not everybody does it that way, but here's the way that I think the hurdle practices need to go. You start off with a hurdle warm-up progression, which I'm going to talk about in a bit. And it's a pretty extensive progression. And then you do your full speed stuff. Then you do your running conditioning. So you're done with hurdling, but you have to do your speed work and your conditioning work. I do know that some hurdle coaches like to do all of their speed and conditioning over hurdles. I'm not in that camp. I think that, number one, it messes up your steps. It throws in the possibility of messing with your psyche and starting to stutter with your steps. Also, I think that you'll never run full speed with the hurdles in the way like you could without hurdles in the way. So you can make a kid faster by having them do their speed work without hurdles. That's the way I do it. And let me just throw this in, but keep in mind that I was the head coach and the hurdle coach, so I could make these kind of rules. But something that I evolved to in the second half of my high school coaching career is I would have my hurdlers show up a half hour before everyone else, and they would do their warm up, and we'd be into the warm up progression, and then the rest of the team would show up, and then they would do their warm up, and they would get into their whatever their workout was. And at the same time, my hurdlers are doing their whatever the hurdle of workout of the day was. And then once they finished, it usually coincided with the other sprinters being halfway done with their workout. And I would tell my hurdlers, okay, now go join the sprinters for the second half of their workout. So, because they had already done running with the hurdling, no reason to do the full sprint workout. So that's just the way I did it. And then we would cool down. Now I want to talk to you about my hurdle warm-up progression, which, by the way, it's part of my hurdling 201. But I'm like most coaches out there, I like a dynamic warm-up. I do have some specific thoughts on that, which I won't really go into today. But basically, I've learned over years what I like and what I don't like, what works in good weather, bad weather, whatever, and I put together a dynamic warm-up. And then we'll space the hurdles out. We'll have 8 hurdles out, butted up to each other. You've seen this many times. I probably should have stuck a picture out here, but when the hurdles are like in a row, touching each other, and the kids are going over them, doing hurdle mobility, some sideways, some over, things like that. So we'll do all that standard hip mobility stuff. And then we'll do our drills. And when we do our drills, what I do is I take every other hurdle and move it out. So you have 4 hurdles spaced out with only a hurdle spacing between them. Again, this is all in my Hurdling 201. So if you want to take that coupon I give you and get Hurdle 201, it's all going to be on there. But this is where they'll do their skipping drills over them. So they'll go over each side and do trail leg drills, each side and do lead leg drills. And they'll also do what's called a hanging trail leg drill. And then what we'll do is, so we're doing them walking and then skipping. And then what we'll do is we're going to spread them out to what I call an off-speed spacing, okay, where they're going to do off-speed hurdling. It's probably not the best description of it. It's just a word I came up with because it's not full speed. It's not half speed. It's about 60 to 80% speed. So I just call it off speed. And just to let you know what that is for my girls, I tend to space them out to where when I'm walking them, like pacing or walking steps, I'll put them every 8 to 9 steps, depending on the girl, depending on where we are in the season. For my boys, it's usually 9 to 10 steps is where I space them out, okay? And then we'll start doing drills, some more drills, but now they're running over them, but not full speed, okay? For the off-speed hurdling, here's the way I do it. And I'll just tell you right now that this piece of the workout, I think, is some of the most important coaching that I do and what I recommend you do. Because when you're doing this, this is where you can work on the details. You can work on the technique without the athlete having to be focused on full speed. It allows them to do more repetitions because the full speed stuff is what gives them the injuries. So this allows you to do more work without worrying about them getting injured. They don't have to go full speed, so they can actually control their bodies. And then also they're not having to put all their energy into reaching the next hurdle in 3 steps. So they can take the time and energy to work on technique. So that's part of the reason we do this. But so what I'll do is I'll have the kids go over to work on their lead leg on both sides. And so only their lead leg is going over the hurdle. And if they're good enough, they will literally bring their lead leg over that hurdle and move it just as if they were going over the hurdle, working on a perfect lead leg. And they'll do both legs because I like to teach my hurdlers both sides so they're ambidextrous. One, because it balances out their body, but also if they do the 300 hurdles, you know how it goes. Sometimes they'll need to clear the hurdle with both legs. This is a good way to learn how to do that. We'll do the same thing with their trail leg. We'll go a couple of times over both sides. And then it's time to go over the middle of the hurdle. And when we go over the middle of the hurdle, we're going to do it about 4 times on average. In the early part of the season, when we're not doing a lot of full speed work, in fact, we're doing no full speed work, and we're just really focusing a lot on starting to gradually build the endurance and then build technique. We'll do this many times, okay? But as the season moves on and I've got other things I need to get on to, I might only do it 4 times. But the first time they go over with their non-dominant leg, and it might be ugly, but this is them learning how to hurdle with this leg because they'll need to know it. And then I'll have them do it, excuse me, 3 to 4 times with their dominant leg. And to me, this is right here, what I'm getting ready to explain to you, is even the cream of, or the secret sauce of this here is, here's the way to handle it. What I'm going to do for each athlete, because at some point you're going to identify, they're going to have multiple issues. Usually they've got at least 3 technical issues they need to work on. Sometimes they're going to have a dozen technical things, but let's say you pick the top 3, okay? And you go to, I don't want to just dictate it to the athlete. I want them to buy in on this. So I'll talk to each of them individually and I'll say, okay, Stephen, what are the top 3 things you need to work on? And then we'll discuss those 3. Okay, Jessica, what are your top 3 things? And so let's call them A, B, and C. So let's say, for example, A is they need to work on going straight into the hurdle with their lead leg. And then B might be working on their lead arm or keeping their arms bent. And let's say that C is running between the hurdles with good steps, landing on the balls of their feet, right? So the first time that they go through these, I'm going to say, okay, first time through, all I want you to do is focus on issue A. That was your arms. Okay, good. And then second time through, I only want you to focus on issue B. That was your lead leg. And then the third time through, I want you to go through and just focus on quick steps, landing on the balls of your feet. And then the fourth time, I'm going to say, great. Now let's pull all 3 of those together and have one really good run through at this. And that's what they do. And this is where the kids learn how to hurdle really well and start to improve over time their technique. Okay. In my opinion, there's so many drills that are out there, and a lot of them I don't like, or a lot of them I think are unnecessary. This is what I think is the real meat and potatoes of how to make an athlete better, or how to make a hurdler better, is right here. So if nothing else that you walk away from this presentation today, if just this, it's going to make you a better hurdle coach and make your athletes better hurdlers. Now that you've gone through this, it's time now to do some full speed hurdling. Okay. Now let me preface this by saying I don't really do full speed hurdling with my athletes in the first 2 weeks of practice, unless they've already been training for a while seriously, and they've already been doing full speed work in the off season, or maybe they're coming off of indoor track or something like that. But even if they're coming out of basketball season, I don't have anybody full speed hurdle unless they've been doing stuff for a couple weeks and we've gradually built into it. So just keep that in mind. But whenever we do the full speed stuff, it is really the minority of the amount of energy that you're spending in hurdle training. The most of it is what I've already covered. But we always, and I'm going to get this out early on, always pinch the spacing and lower the hurdles a lot. Always. Even when I've had returning state champions, we don't ever, I shouldn't say, almost never do we run with full spacing and full height. Okay, now let me cover some questions that you might be having right now. If this is a new concept to you, you might be thinking, but don't I need my athletes to know what it's like to jump over that full height? And don't I need them to know what it's going to be like to run that full spacing? And here's what I'm going to tell you is it's really nearly impossible in a practice situation to replicate what you're going to feel like and be like at a meet. Meaning at a meet, you're fresh, you're more fresh, you're all psyched up, you got the crowd there, your adrenaline is really flowing, and you're able to do things better than you normally can. That's the reason why steps get all messed up in meets. That's the reason why you could practice your 300 hurdles every day and think you have your steps right. And as soon as they get to the meet, they're just running so much faster and taking bigger strides because that's the way that it is. So although you think that you're not getting them ready, you really are preparing them perfectly. Because if you were to do full height and full spacing, it's like spreading out the hurdles farther than race spacing and higher than racing height. So it's really the same. So just know that if you can get a kid, like a boy, to run over hurdles that are one click lower than and 12 inches pinched, and they can do it looking good in practice, they'll be totally fine to race. No questions asked. You just say, go out there and do what you can do, and they will be able to fly over the 3 steps, okay? And in a girl, it's gonna be maybe like a 1.5 foot. I've even seen it to where they're sometimes 2 foot shorter in practice, but they can still manage it in a meet, okay? And the other thing to keep in mind is that spacing will gradually increase as the season goes on. So maybe in the last third or the last fourth of the season, you're getting really close to racing spacing or official race distance spacing, but not until then. So just know that. Okay, moving on here. So we always do some start to the first hurdle because that is so critical. Every single day of every day that we do hurdle practice, no matter what we're doing, we're going to go, even if your emphasis that day is to do 300-meter training, we always start with, okay, we're going to do first on the 100-meter, 110-meter spacing, start to first hurdle. And we might do it 1, 2, or 3 times. Just because I want that so ingrained and they have that spacing down so perfect, they can do it any day of the week and it's never a problem. I will also add though, in case you're wondering, because I just told you in the first few weeks, I don't think you should do full speed. You probably want to move your start line a little forward so that you can go from the start to the first hurdle with about 80% speed. And then gradually, maybe the second week, pull it back a little bit. And probably by the third week, you're able to go from the start line to the first hurdle, okay? By the time they're ready for a meet. And then you're going to do some full speed or, wherever you're at in the season over multiple hurdles. Now that could be 2 hurdles, 3 hurdles, 4 hurdles, 6 hurdles, whatever you're doing. It just depends on what you're working on. But if you're doing the full speed stuff, that's when you work on this. And your workout depends on a couple of meaning exactly what the workout is going to be depends on the day of the week. Meaning that there's some days in the week where you're going to say, let's say, for example, you are practicing hurdles Monday and Wednesday, and then you race on Friday or Saturday. On Monday, you might say, the emphasis today is speed. And it also depends on the time of season where you're at, but you're going to say, so we're going to mostly work on the sprint hurdles, but then we're going to do some work going full speed over the first 1, 2, or 3 hurdles of the 300 hurdles. And then maybe on Wednesday, it's more of an endurance-based workout where you're going to say, okay, we're going to do start to finish line a few times, but then we're going to work on hurdling endurance where you're going to spread out, you could put maybe 10 hurdles out really close together and they're just doing multiple repetitions of going over these close, but just working on endurance and good technique versus what you were doing on your speed day where you're going, more near race distance and going full speed for lesser repetitions, longer rest periods. I hope I'm not confusing people because it can get complicated, but I'll tell you in a little bit how you can work on this. But also, it also depends on the week of the season, meaning, again, at the beginning part of the season, in fact, I have it outlined here. I'll get to that in a little bit. Actually, I've got a chart 2 slides forward. I'll save this one. So as I was sort of mentioning here, 2 to 3 sessions a week, you're going to do some emphasis on your sprint hurdles and then some emphasis on your long hurdles, your 300 hurdles. Sometimes you're going to work on speed. Sometimes you're going to work on endurance. Sometimes you're going to work on speed endurance. As a coach, just like you, in your training, hopefully in your speed and endurance training you're doing for all your runners, you're taking them through cycles or a progression throughout the season. You do the same thing with your hurdle training. The first part of the season is slower stuff, working on endurance, and then you're getting into speed endurance, and then you're getting into full speed. And you evolve your hurdle practices, your hurdle workouts throughout the season, just like that. Okay. So if you were to look at it, I'm basically talking ahead of all my slides, but the beginning of the season, endurance, middle of the season, speed endurance, end of the season, a lot of top speed stuff and a lot of mental focus where you're going to do a lot of visualizing, like let's say you put out some hurdles. Let's say you're going to do 6 hurdles and you've got them near race spacing. And maybe you put 2 or 3 hurdlers and they're going to race against each other. And you tell them, I want you guys to imagine that you're at the meet. You really get in their heads and just say, it's all down to the line, and, just really get them excited. And then you fire your gun or you slap your hands or whatever you're doing, and they take off full speed, well, as if they're in a meet. And so they can just learn to feel that success and not only have that at a meet, but you want them to be mentally strong as well. Okay, that's it. I know that was a ton of information in a short amount of time, but I hope you got a lot out of it. As I said, I'm going to give you $29 off on anything that I have to offer. So what you need to do is head over to my website at acemethodcoaching.com. This is the hurdling page. Scroll down to here. This is the 101, 201, 301 that I mentioned. You can use that coupon to get either one of these, but what you really need is my hurdle training plan. As you heard in the presentation, there's a whole lot to take into consideration when you're planning your workouts for the entire season. I've done all the work for you and put it together in this 60-page, very detailed manual. It's going to be everything that you need for all of your hurdlers from beginning, middle, and the end of the season to succeed. And I've got some bad news and good news. The bad news is that $29 can't apply to just the hurdle training plan. But the good news is you can apply it to my most popular product with coaches. If you go here and click Bundle and Save, you'll see what's called the Silver Bundle Coach. It's $149. It includes the 3 instructional videos and the hurdle training plan for $149. You can apply your $29 coupon for this. So you have a choice of either one of these or this. When you get this, it gives you direct access to me. I have an exclusive web page for all the coaches that are on this program where I have a Q&A in there, and you can ask me questions, and they're my priority to get to you as soon as possible. So you have all the information you need to succeed through the season. Again, this is by far the most popular thing that hurdle coaches get from me. That's it. I hope you get it, and I look forward to working with you. Have a great season.